Well, we hope your jug is boiled. We hope you've got your favourite slice or cookie at the go, because it is time now for New Zealand's biggest small group.
And we are joined by Pastor Craig Ashby from Alexandra Baptist Church to take a look at the Gospel of Luke, looking at chapter 7. Well, good morning, Craig. Thank you for joining us today.
Maureen, good to have you. Good to be on deck.
So I'm fascinated to see where this conversation goes today, because there's a lot of stories you read in the Bible, and after you've read them a few times, you just kind of gloss over them. Like the real impact is lost. But the story you've got for us today is a real head scratcher.
It sure is. So it might surprise listeners that Jesus actually loved a good party, and he got invited to a lot of dinner parties. And he might not have been the person you'd want to invite sometimes, because he did tend to make a scene on occasions. But on this particular story, as recorded in Luke, someone else makes the scene, right? So what happens, let me set it up for you. There's Jesus there. He goes to this sort of religious elite guy's house to have dinner, and reclining there at the table. And this woman comes in of, according to the text, an immoral reputation. So, she's certainly got some social stigma about her. And she comes in, she cracks open this ridiculously expensive bottle of perfume, pours it on Jesus' feet, weeps, and her tears splash onto his feet. And then she wipes his feet dry with her hair and then kisses her feet.
Kisses his feet.
That's the setup, right?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I guess if you're picturing like a modern equivalent, it's the equivalent of you having like a pretty nice dinner party with your mates. You're all relaxed, everyone's having a good time, and then someone off the street, let's say off K Road, comes running in and then starts kissing your feet. I mean, even that alone, aside from the expensive bottle of perfume, would be quite the scene, right?
Oh, unbelievably. Like, it's crazy, even if you sort of transplanted it to a modern setting. But then just on any social setting, right, they'll be awkward. But imagine the intimacy of a dinner party. And then, Jesus is like supposed to be the honored guest. And it's just a crazy mashup.
And also the woman-male thing, like back in time. That breaching of like social barriers. I mean, you weren't even really meant to be around a man without like, some kind of guardian like escorting you. So the fact that she just bust onto the scene and like went straight up to Jesus, who was also a revered rabbi as well. I mean, crazy.
And then he's fine with it, right? Like he uses this as a sermon illustration for everybody else to say, by the way, you can all learn from this. So look, Craig, what stood out to you with this one in particular?
Well, I think the thing that just blows me away is there's just a beautiful picture of forgiveness. So Jesus, you're right, uses this as a teaching story, talks about two guys who had a debt. One had the equivalent of $100,000 now, and the other had equivalent of $10,000 now. And basically in the story, these two guys get their debt cancelled, and Jesus puts it to all the guests at the dinner party. Okay, so who loved the most? And the obvious answer is the person who was forgiven the most. And so he turns to this woman who's at his feet, just picture it there, sort of kneeling, weeping, kind of looking around. The stares of the room are just totally fixated on her. And he says, well, this woman is forgiven much because her sins are much. And he essentially restores her, says that she can go in peace, and reconciles her to God, which is actually probably more scandalous than the whole, the touching of the feet, the man, the woman, all that sort of crazy stuff. Like, the real scandal of the story is actually Jesus forgives anyone who asks.
Yeah, he doesn't rebuke her. He doesn't shame her. He doesn't look at her with loathing like everybody else. What do you think we can learn from this when we think of Jesus' response to this person that society frowned upon? How do you think we can take that and apply that to our own lives?
Well, I think, if you've been walking the Christian journey for a while, even if you've been on it for a short time, the whole intent is to follow in the footsteps of Jesus, right? To live like he lived, to love like he loved, and to forgive like he forgave. And so I think, that's the ideal. It is really, really hard, because often when we're wronged, if we're honest, we quite like it that someone has to learn their lesson, maybe the hard way, or that they have to stew on what they've done, or we shouldn't have to make the first move, that sort of stuff. But I don't know if I could quote C.S. Lewis. He said, to be a Christian is to forgive the inexcusable in others, because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you.
Wow.
And so it's a pretty huge challenge. But I think maybe that means just for all of us, just being willing to make that first move. Maybe today, send the text, make the phone call, catch up for coffee, and yeah, I guess just restart that conversation, see where it goes.
I tell you what strikes me too for the first time, having listened to this story, maybe for the 50th time,
Yeah.
but also in Jesus' description of this person, he doesn't minimize any of the things that she's done wrong. Like he actually says,
not at
yeah,
all.
no, she is actually, she's like, oh, I'm a terrible person. And like, hear me rightly here, but he's basically like, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
you are.
Because
Yep.
what do we tend to do, right? Like if we make a mistake or somebody, we go, oh, look, it's not that big a deal. It's fine. It's okay. I understand. You had a rough day, and we minimize these kind of things. But Jesus shows us this way of saying, well, no, look, these things that you've done are bad things, but they also don't get in the way of my love for you, which is, I think, what we struggle with. Like we think the bigger the sin, the bigger the gap. And he's like, well, yeah, big sin is a problem, but actually I will still make space and time for you, so you don't have to kind of minimize or pretend that you're a better person than you are to come close to me.
No, totally not. And I think you're right. The bigger the sin, the bigger the love, really, the bigger the forgiveness. And I think that's actually puts us all on an equal footing. We're actually, carrying that guilt, that shame, whatever from our past, the baggage. But the scandal of this story is that God's goodness and grace is available to anyone who's going to humble themselves, admit their failings, and be willing to start over with Jesus. And so, yeah, for me anyway, that's the takeaway. It's pretty encouraging, pretty humbling,
Yeah.
but also, yeah, just something to look forward to.
Very challenging. And I imagine there are people right now thinking like, this is something that I struggle with. So I reckon up next, we should pray about this. If you have anything that you have on your heart, if you are struggling, get in touch, 8168 with the keyword Rhema, send us a message and we'll pray about this up next. But thank you so much, Craig from Alexandra Baptist Church. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a pleasure. Thanks.
Ah, amazing. I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did.
Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn your notifications on so you don't miss the next video.
We'll see you in the next one.